Hey, my friends, it's Leah with your Winning Wednesday, WINSDAY, coming to you on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. I hope you're having a wonderfully winning day and a fabulously winning week. How many of us have ever been tried and just have fallen into this place where we just go, oh, and we just say things that we wish we wouldn't have said? Probably all of us. And we're talking about using wisdom with our words. And that's what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. And we're going to continue in that vein right now with wisdom at the well. So let's get right into our lesson. A couple of weeks ago, we began talking about Proverbs chapter 10, and we did several verses out of there. And we're going to do 4 more verses from that same chapter. So Proverbs chapter 10, verses 18 through 21. So let's get right into the lesson and read through that, and let's talk about it. Proverbs 10, 18 through 21 says, "Whoever hides hatred has lying lips, and whoever spreads slander is a fool. In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver. The heart of the wicked is worth little. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of wisdom." There is a lot of wisdom, a lot of stuff packed in those 4 verses. So let's get busy unpacking it and let's talk about what it's saying to us. So the very first verse it's verse 18, talks about whoever hides hatred has lying lips. And what this means about hiding hatred is that hateful and angry people attempt to conceal their hatred, but they're not usually very successful because all of it tends to come out of their mouths, doesn't it? We know that's true. It tends to leak from their body because it leaks out of their mouth because maybe they get in a situation where they're frustrated about something. Maybe they get in a long bank line and they get frustrated and they start mouthing off about something. Maybe they get in traffic and they're very frustrated, and so they start using a stream of words that maybe are not very nice to the other drivers. Maybe they're in a restaurant and their order doesn't come out the way they wanted it to, and so they get frustrated and they take it out on the waiter or the waitress. It's because they've got all this accumulated hatred and anger inside of them, and it just comes out of their speech. And a lot of times people have this, and it's been in there for a long time, but they haven't ever dealt with it, and so it comes out at the most inopportune times, or at situations that don't have anything to do with what they're really angry about, but their anger comes out in that. So let's just go on and talk a little bit more about this. Hateful people reveal their hatred in their speech, which is what we were just saying. They do it in other ways too. A lot of times they'll do it in gossip. They'll do it in slander. They'll do it in plotting against other people. When a hateful person plots evil against another person, it is generally because of an offense or a perceived offense. And so they begin plotting against that person because it creates a level of envy or jealousy or a desire for restitution and revenge. And so they begin to plot their way and decide, this is how I'm going to do this. But most of the time, it's with their mouth first before they ever do anything else. And so they begin plotting this evil against this person. And their goal is to destroy the other person, and starting out with the use of their words. And so they want to submarine the other person's efforts in whatever they're doing. They want to speak against them in an effort to form an alliance, maybe with that other person's friends. And so they want to get their friends on their side so they can use that against them also. So they form this alliance around themselves against that person. And the whole point is the effort to destroy the other person's character or their reputation or something like that. And Jesus himself had things to say about this. He said the effort to destroy another person is what he called murderous thoughts. You know, it's when you're trying to, he says, if you've even thought about murdering someone in your heart, then you've already done it. You've already committed the act. And when we think about this, it's not like physically murdering somebody, but it's assassinating their character or ruining their reputation with your words. And it's the same kind of thing, because you're coming against them. You're murdering their character. You're hurting them. And so you've had this thought and you're entertaining it and you're acting on it. And so it becomes a murderous plot against that person. So this proverb is stating that this person filled with such hatred attempts to convince people that they're not harboring this anger. Have you ever met somebody that does that? They're talking about this and talking about that. Oh, but I'm not mad at it. I've forgiven them, but I'm going to keep on talking about it. And you're going, well, if you're going to keep on talking about it, have you really forgiven them? Because the answer is no, they haven't, and that's why they keep talking about it. So they try to convince others that they're not harboring ill will. And so what happens when they do this, they've got these ill feelings toward whoever, or maybe it's a group of people or an organization or whatever. But when they claim that they don't, they become guilty of not only harboring the hatred, and plotting evil against this other person or this organization because of this offense or perceived offense, but and then leading to those murderous thoughts of assassinating their character and reputation and things like that. But then they cover it all up by lying about it. So it's one sin upon another sin upon another sin, and it just keeps on growing. And that's what this is saying. When you're living like this, you become this lie with your life. So let's go on to the next verse, verse 19. It says, in the multitude of words, sin is not lacking. So you can go back to the previous verse, and this person is talking about this other person or this group of people or whatever. And so they're talking, and in their speech then becomes all of this sinfulness because of the things that they're saying, because it's all coming out of that hatred that they are harboring in their heart. So in that multitude of words, sin is not lacking. There's a lot of sin happening with their words. If someone is constantly talking, they're just talking all the time, they will eventually sin with their mouth. And this is a good lesson for all of us, because wouldn't it be great to say, I've not sinned with my mouth? Well, I know I have, and probably everybody within the sound of my voice has probably done the same thing. And what's interesting is, in the story of Job, it's a book in the Old Testament. If you're not familiar with the story, you need to go back and read it. It's 40 some odd chapters long, but it's a really good story, and it's full of good wisdom and information for us to live by today. But in Job's story, Job was a very wealthy man. He had a big family. He had 10 children. He had a wife and these 10 children. He had crops. He had livestock. He had everything going for him. He was very wealthy. He had all of these things, these wonderful things happening. And out of nowhere, he lost all of his children. He lost all of his crops. He lost all of his livestock. And he even lost his health. And in all of that, his wife said, why don't you just curse God and die? And even after that, the Bible tells us several times in the book of Job that Job never sinned with his mouth. He never said anything that was sinful with his mouth. He was a very devout man, and he didn't understand why God was allowing these things to happen to him, but he never sinned by the things that he said. And I would love to be able to say that from this point forward. I would love to be able to say, from this day forward, I did not sin with my mouth. That's a good goal for all of us to have. So he didn't say more than he needed to say. And in fact, when his wife said what she did, when she said, why don't you just curse God and die? He said, you're being foolish. Why in the world would I do that? Can we only accept the good from God and not trust him in adversity? Is that not possible? Of course it is. So I need to trust him because he's God and I'm not. And so he even admonished his wife and said, don't talk like that. You're being foolish. So let's go on in this verse 19. In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking. So if someone is constantly talking, they're probably going to eventually sin with the things they say. And if you find yourself in a disagreement, the more that is spoken, don't you know this is true? If you've ever gotten into an argument with your siblings or a coworker or a friend or a parent or your spouse, you start talking about this thing and you disagree on this issue, and the more you talk about it and the more words that are spoken, the more the conversation escalates, and then people start saying things that they really don't mean. They start saying things and making accusations and speaking ill and defaming toward each other. And they even a lot of times will try to justify their position falsely And sometimes people will even just flat out lie just to justify their position. So we need to be careful not to speak too many words when it's not necessary. In the New Testament, Paul told Timothy that people can become busybodies when they let their minds grow idle. When they're not busying themselves in the work of the Lord, then they become busybodies in other people's stuff, and they start creating problems with all of these thoughts that they have, and they don't guard their thoughts, so then they don't guard their speech, and then it creates problems with people. And so Paul said, don't let these things happen. Job's friends that talked to him were guilty of defaming Job's character, because they were saying, well, what in the world did you do? What are you guilty of that God would allow this to happen to you? Surely you must have done something. And he kept saying, I haven't done anything. I've just tried to live rightly. And they kept being accusers of him. So instead of comforting him, they became his accusers. So they became sinful in the words that they were speaking to him. So it's been said, as we know, probably most of us have heard this before, that in fact, we don't really know who said this in the first place. It's been attributed to a lot of people, including Abraham Lincoln, but and Mark Twain, I believe, that it's better to be thought a fool and keep silent than to speak and remove all doubt. And there's so much truth in that. But the first time it was said was in Proverbs, probably in chapter 10, verse 19 that we just read, but also in Proverbs 17:28. Because it says, even a fool is counted as wise when he holds his peace. When he shuts his lips, he's considered perceptive. So it's saying that keep your mouth shut if you don't have to say anything, and just because you'll even look like you have more wisdom than you have if you just don't say anything. And so we don't need to use a bunch of words if we don't need to. So let's look at the other half of this verse, verse 19. It finishes up by saying, but he who restrains his lips is wise. So if we hold our words, hold our tongue, as we like to say, there is less opportunity to sin with our speech, because we're going to be saying less, because we're going to be leading with our ears, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We need to listen first, think about it, and then speak. We're all guilty of speaking and then thinking about it. And that's really a bad way to go. We need to listen, then think, and then speak. And be careful to do that all the time. If you look in Genesis chapter 24, there's the story of Abraham's servant who was going to seek a wife for Abraham's son Isaac. And so Abraham said, I want you to go to my homeland. God took me out of there, so I cannot go back. So I want you to go back, and I want you to look for a wife for my son. And so Abraham's servant said he would do this, and he prayed a prayer, and he said, God, I need this person to say this and to do this. And so what happened was that he ended up at a well, and Rebecca was a young lady who came out to the well, and she spoke the words and brought up the pitcher of water to Abraham's servant, and did all of the things, said all the things exactly as he had prayed. And so he knew, he felt like it was a confirmation that this was the correct person. But here's what happened. When this happened, the servant did not speak. And in Genesis chapter 24, verse 21, it says, and the man wondering at her, excuse me, remained silent, so as to know whether the Lord had made his journey prosperous or not. So he stood there. He heard what she said, and he knew this was exactly what he had prayed. He saw what she did. This is exactly what he had prayed. And so he felt like this was a confirmation, but he waited. He didn't want to say anything until he knew for certain. So he was thinking and not speaking before he needed to speak. So rather than speaking, he waited and listened with his ears and his spirit to receive the confirmation of the Lord. And so he learned that Rebecca was indeed the one that would be Isaac's wife. And so that's what he took her back with him. So in verse 20, excuse me, of this proverb, I don't know what's going on with my voice now. Verse 20, it says, the tongue of the righteous is like choice silver. The heart of the wicked is worth little. So what is this choice silver? Of course, that means it's of high value. So the words of a righteous person carry a lot of value and weight. It matters. A righteous person, when they speak, you need to listen to them because they're going to speak with wisdom. Conversely, on the other hand, the words of an unrighteous person is like the dross that is removed from the top of the purified silver. Because remember, when a metal is purified, it's heated, and then all of the junk that's in that metal, they want out of it. So all of the junk comes to the top, and that's called the dross. And so they wipe the dross away as it rises to the top. They push it away because it is of no value, because they want the pure metal of this precious or semi-precious metal. And so they take this dross and they wipe it off the top. So the dross that is removed is of no value. And it's the same with those kinds of words. Those kinds of words are worthless and have little or no value because it's coming from a wicked heart. So we need to be careful about the things that we say, because we want the words that we have and the words that we speak to be of choice silver, to be like giving someone a gift with the words that we speak. So verse 21, it says, the lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for a lack of wisdom. Wow. Again, it's just making that contrast between wisdom and foolishness. So wise people bring wise counsel when they speak, and they bring wise instruction to everyone they speak to. While fools or foolish people they're either not shepherds at all, or they fall into their own pit of self-destruction, or they shepherd others into waywardness, and then they all fall into this destruction together. So fools don't make a commitment one way or the other, so they just kind of float around and just flounder in every way. And that's the kind of person that James calls a double-minded man. And they're unstable no matter what they do, because they're not making a choice to either be righteous or to do evil. They're not choosing either way. They're just kind of floating with whatever happens. And that is not a good way to be, because it's foolish. And it says that righteous people then bring life-giving nourishment to themselves with their words. So, when you speak right things, good things are going to happen for you, for yourself, as well as the people that you're speaking those words to. So righteous people bring life-giving nourishment with their words to themselves and to those who hear what they're saying, because they bring wise thoughts, and their wise thoughts bring these corresponding wise words. So foolish people, on the other hand, cannot provide for themselves to keep themselves alive because of their lack of sense, because they're not making a commitment in either direction. So let's talk about this word fool that is used throughout the Proverbs. It's actually used many times in the scripture, but in the Proverbs quite a lot. And the Hebrew word there is evil, which sounds a lot like evil. Evil, and it means to be morally deficient. So you're not being wise, you're being immoral, you're morally deficient, you're willfully refusing to make moral choices, neither choosing good nor rejecting evil. You're not making a choice one way or the other. You're just out there. You're just kind of out there being whatever. So you're being morally deficient, and you refuse moral instruction. A foolish person refuses moral instruction. They never learn from their own mistakes. They just keep on making the same decisions over and over again, and they never learn that, oh, hello, I'm the common denominator in this problem. So they never learn from their own mistakes, and they become morally corrupt because they are willfully incapable of making sound moral judgments, because they choose not to. It's not because they can't make it, it's because they choose not to make that decision. So fools are marked by their own folly. That's what this proverb is telling us, particularly by the way they speak. Because if you've ever listened to somebody who's just kind of foolish, you just go, oh my word, what did they even just say? I don't think they even know what they just said. Because it can mean a lot of things. Speaking with poor timing about a subject. Maybe you're talking about something that you shouldn't be talking about in a particular time or a time frame, or with a particular group of people. Maybe you're speaking the wrong things and being very offensive by choice. Because you're just trying to make a point, and it's creating an offense because you're choosing that, because you're being foolish with your words. It's quick to, a foolish person is quick to reveal their anger. We talked about that at the very beginning. A foolish person is somebody who does not use wisdom with controlling their temperament. And the Bible tells us that when we have the Holy Spirit dwelling within us, we have control of our temperament. It's one of the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control, temperance. That means I can control how I behave. I control my anger. I control what I do with it. I control the decisions that I make. And that's what this is saying to us. A foolish person is quick to reveal their anger and slow to or showing refusal to resolve a conflict. So they're very slow to take care of situations. They're not using wisdom and saying, you know what, I really blew that. I'm so sorry. I should not have said that. And let's correct it and let's move on. They never learn from their mistakes. And that's what this word is telling us when somebody is being foolish. So it's a very good lesson for us. And our goal should be always to speak words that are like choice silver. And you know what? I want to tell myself that all the time, because my words need to be a gift. And a couple of weeks ago on Father's Day, I shared with you how encouraging Mike is. Mike is very encouraging to me most of the time. And he says things to me that just encourage me and help me do better and that kind of stuff. And we want to be that way with everyone. I remember when I used to work in an office all the time, people would ask me, how you doing? And I'd say, sunny side up, because I want to have a joyful outlook on everything, because I do want to be that way. And I want my words, I want them to say, you know what, I really like being around her, because when she speaks to me, it's encouraging. I want to be around her because I feel like she's my cheerleader. And in fact, people have told me that before. You're always my cheerleader, and I really appreciate that. And so it's very important for us to use those words as a gift. And I think it's mostly important, or I shouldn't say mostly, but it's very important for us to be that way around the people that we are the closest to, because what happens is we feel the most secure around them, so we're the least likely to give them the silver platter, the words that need to be choice silver. We need to do that with the people that we love the most, that we're with the most, because they need it probably just as much, if not more, than everyone else. So it's a good lesson for all of us to say, you know what, I don't want to be foolish with my speech. I want to have choice silver whenever my words come out of my mouth. I want them to be what that person needs to hear, and it's something that would be encouraging to them. So our goal should be to speak words that are like choice silver, and giving that person a valuable gift with our words, something that we can work on every single day. So I hope this is a good lesson for you. It's a good one for me. I think we all need it, probably need it every day, at least 2 or 3 times a day, probably, at different times, depending on the situation. But anyway, it's a good lesson for us. So I hope that you will take your Bibles out and read Proverbs chapter 10 and read these 4 verses. If you don't read anything else today, read these 4, 18 through 21, and just let it speak to you, and think about the way that you speak with the people around you. I'd like to close today, of course, by inviting you to join us on Sunday. We have our Sunday school classes at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's Sunday School and Discipleship for people of all ages. So from the nursery all the way to the oldest adult, we've got something for everyone. So we hope that you will make plans to join us for that time. And immediately following that at 11 o'clock is our worship service. And of course, we live stream our worship service right here on this Facebook page. So we hope that if you are in the Wellington area, that you will join us in person so that we can meet with you, talk with you face to face, and that we can worship the Lord together in the building. And if you are not in Wellington, in the Wellington area, we would love for you to join us online. So of course, we are on Central Time because we're in Texas. We meet at 1000 Amarillo Street in Wellington, Texas. So I hope that you will make plans to join us this week. And in the meantime, have a wonderfully winning Wednesday, a fabulously winning week, and I will see you on Sunday. Have a great